Welcome to the Hundredfold Journey. We help people step out of religious bondage and into true abundance. We invite you to embark on a journey, a spiritual journey called the Hundredfold. At a Hundredfold, we are a group of people developing new thoughts, habits, and beliefs to understand our true identity, to live our life purpose, and experience the abundant life just the way Jesus did. Our mission is to provide support, encouragement, and resources to help you on your journey. The life you are meant to live is closer than you think. The journey is the destination, and your journey starts now. Good morning, Doug here from the Hundredfold Journey. Thanks again for joining us on this Grace Awakening Network program. The Hundredfold is about us embarking on a journey with you so that you can know your true identity, live your life purpose, and experience true abundance. Because a Hundredfold is about a group of people who are looking to find their true identity, and by doing so, finding God's true identity. So thanks for joining us this Sunday morning. We are in a new series called the I Am Statements of Jesus, and there were 7 I Am statements found in the book of John and the Gospel of John. And in John, it says that in that day you will know that I am in my Father, you are in me, and I am in you. So basically what that means is that I am, who is God, is in me, the same way that he was in Jesus. And we're going to be looking at these 7 I am statements about who Jesus said he was and how that applies to us, because you are God's perfect reflection. So today we're going to be talking about the I am, the bread of life statement of Jesus. Just as a reminder, last week we talked about where I am came from, and that was the name that God gave himself as he was talking to Moses back in Exodus, back at that burning bush. And when Moses asked God who he was and who he should share with the Israelites, he used the term I am. So that was a very holy name that God gave, and anytime that Jesus used it, the scribes and the Pharisees got a little upset because he was associating himself with God. So that's kind of the background. So if you need more information on the I am and the origins of that, go back to the previous study. So here's where Jesus makes the statement. It's found in John 6. Then Jesus said to them, and he's talking about the scribes and the Pharisees, most assuredly I say to you, Moses did not give you the bread from heaven, but my Father gives you the true bread from heaven. For the bread of God is he who comes down from heaven and gives life to the world. Then they said to him, Lord, give us this bread always. And Jesus said to them, I am the bread of life. He who comes to me shall never hunger, and he who believes in me shall never thirst. The Jews then complained about him because he said, I am the bread which came down from heaven. Then Jesus repeats, I am the bread of life. Your fathers ate the manna in the wilderness and are dead. This is the bread which comes down from heaven, that one may eat of it and not die. I am the living bread which came down from heaven. If anyone eats of this bread, he will live forever. And the bread that I shall give is my flesh, and I shall give for the life of the world. So very powerful statement that Jesus is saying here, that he is the bread of life. You eat of me and you will never hunger, and it gives life to the world, right? So what does that really mean? So just to kind of break it down a little bit, the Greek word for bread is artos. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. And it's food composed of flour mixed with water and baked. The Israelites made it from an oblong or round cake as thick as your thumb and as large as a platter. Hence, it was not cut. It wasn't like our traditional, American style bread where you get a loaf of bread. It was actually flat, more like a tortilla, a flour tortilla, but it is kind of thick, right? And then when they would eat it, they would break it off. They wouldn't cut it or slice it or anything. And in Matthew, it also says, "Give us this day our daily bread," right? In the prayer, our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. That prayer also includes, "Give us this day our daily bread." Give us Christ daily. Matthew 26, this is when he is in the upper room and he's giving thanks, and he broke the bread, right? He broke it because it was in this flat surface. And he says, "Take, eat, this is my body, which is broken for you." And then in Ephesians, it also says that we are members of his body, his flesh, and his bones. So basically, we are part of this body, which is Christ, and we are also bread because we're part of his body. Now, just to add a little bit more, the Hebrew term for bread, and this is found in Exodus, where it talks about the bread which was called manna. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a certain quota every day, that I may test them whether they walk in my law or not." And in Genesis 2, it says this is when Adam fell, and God pronounces that in the sweat of your face you shall eat bread till you return to the ground. So bread was very important. It talks about what life is, and where we can get our sustenance every single day, right? And God provides the bread. Um, Even though in Genesis it talks about that you shall eat, you have to work and till the ground to get the bread. But what the contrast of that is that Jesus and God provides the bread for us. So we no longer have to work for that bread. It is given to us freely, right? So there's the contrast. So Greek and Hebrew term for bread. Now, he's the bread of life. And what is life? Life is the Greek word zoe, which is life, vitality, and being complete. So it can talk about the divine life, which is the zoe life. It's eternal, it's perfect, and it's our source. It's also can be termed spiritual life, um, through faith, a connection for something greater than themselves, and an abundant life suggests a life full of vitality, purpose, and fulfillment. So this is the life that Christ has given to us. That's who we are. And then in Hebrew, the word for life is age, alive, or living. And in Deuteronomy, it talks about, I've set before you life and death, choose life. And the word for in Hebrew is che, describes someone full of energy and vitality, right? So it's not someone that's sickly or anything. It's both the Greek and the Hebrew talks about vitality and living life to its fullest. And that's the life that Christ has given to us. And then the last term that I wanted to cover is just the Hebrew word for manna. And what's funny about it is the definition is, what is it? And as the Hebrews were gathering the flakes, um, they okay, what is this stuff? But it gave them nourishment. Um, so the Bible describes manna in several ways, giving us a good idea of its appearance and taste. It was a fine and flake-like thing. Notice thing. They weren't quite sure what it was. It was a coriander-sized seed, which was pretty small and round, and the color was white. And the taste it tasted like honey, and they were able to cook with it. They were able to bake with it and mix it with other ingredients. So overall, the Bible paints a picture of manna as a small, white, flaky substance with a sweet taste. It seems to have been versatile enough to be eaten raw or prepared in different ways. So it's pretty cool how God was able to do that. In fact, here's kind of a picture which I really like, this white flake kind of substance that that was given to Israel. And by the way, the reason this started was because the Israelites complained, right? Uh, they get saved from the Egyptians. They cross the Red Sea, and then they start complaining. You send us out here to die. There's no food, there's no water, and God provided every step of the way. Um, and then so God heard their cry and provided bread from heaven and dew to bread each morning. So each morning, just like dew here in the States, there's kind of a wetness on the ground. Well, that wetness turned into these flakes. And interesting that it was supplied for 6 days. And on the sixth day, there were 2 days worth of manna. So they didn't have to gather on the seventh day, which was considered the day of rest. But then still, after years of this, they started to complain, we're tired of eating this stuff. But uh, but anyways, God supplied the manna, and notice it's from heaven, right? And that's what Jesus described, is that he was the one that came down and supplies everybody's needs more than they needed for any given day. So the symbolism of bread. Bread is, you could consider it as food, and then life is just supply, right? We're being supplied with life and the sustenance that we need. And body is that we're one. We're one with that body. And in Matthew, it says that, but he answered and said, it is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. So when we hear from God and and his spirit is within us and he's guiding us every step of the way, it's our bread, it's our life, because we're following and being directed by spirit. And then in John 4, it says, I have food to eat that you know nothing about. So it's a hidden manna um, that that you can't physically see, but it's inside of us. So in summary, for the symbolism is, bread is the food supply from inside the unseen. If I was to summarize how that describes what Christ was talking about, it's a source, it's a supply from one, and that is Christ who is in us. And it's on the inside. We don't get it from the outside, it's from the inside. And the perfect example of that is communion, making the invisible visible. So what is happening on the inside of us, eating the bread and even drinking the wine, that's what our sustenance is inside of us. So we have a hidden manna, it's inside of us. And communion is an external, just representing it. It doesn't do anything to us because it's external. It's what's already happening on the inside. So communion is an example of what Jesus was talking about. Now, one other point on the symbolism of the bread is the substance that is needed for life here on earth. It's a spiritual bread that we eat from the unseen. The process of eating bread. So I thought it was interesting that if you think about how you eat bread, you see it, you identify it, and you choose to eat it, right? You can choose not to eat it, like the Israelites. They could choose not to get the manna in during the day, and then the process of actually consuming it, right? You bite it, you chew it, you swallow it, you ingest it. So it just becomes part of your sustenance and providing what you need for any given day. Now, interesting, there were two elements of bread and manna in the temple. So if you go back into the Old Testament, there was the tabernacle of God, there was the temple of God. And while they were going through the desert, it was actually called the tabernacle. It was a tent, and it was a mobile tent, and there were three sections in this tabernacle. And there was an outer court, there was an inner court, and then there was a Holy of Holies. And it turns out that on the holy place, the inner court, there was a table of showbread where there were actually 10 loaves. And in fact, there's a picture, a good picture of what the bread that is made is. You can see that it's round and it's flat, and it's cut, not cut. You break it off, and there's actually a table of showbread, is what it's called, inside that inner that holy place, which is inside the first door, and that bread was there continually, and there was oil and wine there as well. So this was inside the tabernacle, inside that holy place. And then the second place it was in the tabernacle was inside the Holy of Holies, which is where the Ark of the Covenant was. And inside there, as you can hopefully see that picture, there was like a little container where manna was kept in that container inside the Ark of the Covenant. And that is where the manna was kept. So interesting, there were two places where bread was kept as a symbol. And when Jesus said that I am the bread of life, he was referring to, he was in the temple, he was in the tabernacle, and he represented the daily bread, and then also the continual bread of the manna that was inside the Ark of the Covenant. In other words, the table of showbread, that bread was always removed. It was, I think it was every day or maybe every couple of days, they would take the bread out and they would put fresh bread in. So it was something that was continually changed out. But inside the Ark of the Covenant, that was continually there. It was never removed. And as we think about where that tabernacle is inside the Holy of Holies, and it's actually, I have a teaching on this, but it's actually in here, right? This is where the Holy of Holies dwells. This is where the dwelling place of God. It's the entire body, but specifically the Ark of the Covenant is between the two cherubs, which is the two lobes of our brain, and God is right in the middle of that, and there's a constant source of manna in there. There's more on that we can talk about later. So where there's a study that I do, which is called where the tabernacle, where the dwelling place of God, and we get into all of that. So anyways, that's where the manna was kept. So now, we ask the question, who's the temple of God? We're God's dwelling place. And where does this bread and manna abide? It abides in us, and it's in the secret place. And there's a hidden source, as Jesus said, that you know not of, but I know what it is, and I tap into that, and we have that same ability. Because you are God's reflection. And in 1 John 4:17, it says, as he is, so I am in this world. And Galatians 2:20, it's no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. So that bread, that sustenance that gives us the Zoe life, the life of vitality, and all of our needs are met. Christ is in us. And then back to our verse 14:20, in that day that you'll know that I am in my Father, you are in me, and I am in you. So we are God's perfect reflection. So how did Jesus demonstrate? So this is for those that are online. So this is a question for you. How did Jesus demonstrate being the bread of life? Are there any examples that maybe you might think of that go, oh, okay, I remember he was the bread of life to this person, or in some situation? So is there something that comes to your mind where Jesus was or demonstrated being the bread of life?
I'm trying to think.
Yeah, so just to spur some thought. So here's an example where he fed the 5,000,
Yeah.
right? And do you remember what happened in that story, feeding the 5,000?
Yeah, he had was it 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread, and he, raised it up and gave thanks, and it multiplied, the baskets filled, And so he was able to feed the 5,000 because he knew that there was unlimited source.
That's right. Unlimited supply. He, just like the manna that came from heaven and was able to fill, uh, uh, provide the supply for the entire camp of the Israelites. And I think some numbers had it like in the millions of people, um, that they had everything that they needed. And here's this one as well. And in fact, do you remember how many loaves or how many baskets were left over?
Um, doesn't come to mind.
Yeah. So there were 12 baskets left
Oh,
over.
yeah.
So even after feeding the 5,000, are you sure you don't want some more? Okay, come on, here's some more. Have some more. Oh no, we're full. I can just kind of see it. And then Jesus says, "All right, collect what's left over." And there were 12 baskets left over. So again, it just describing that we have more than what we need, and there's even an abundance. There's even leftovers. Um, so that was a demonstration of Jesus being the bread of life. And then how about the upper the Last Supper, right? He was demonstrating that. Do you recall the story on that one?
Where he broke the bread
Yeah,
and divided it up
yeah,
for the
exactly,
12 disciples.
exactly. Yeah. So again, just he represented that he was breaking his body
Mhm.
for the world. And just another example is like the man at the pool of Bethesda, where he couldn't walk to get to the water in time, because when the water would move, then they were able to be healed. And Jesus became the bread of life and healed the man. Um, so he was giving him sustenance. He was giving him life, because his bones weren't working. He wasn't able to walk. So Jesus gave him that Zoe life, the life that was already in him. He just didn't realize it. And Jesus pulled from what was inside of him and said, "See, you are already healed." And then the woman with the issue of blood, where she touched Jesus's cloak, and she was instantly healed. Same thing, right? Is Jesus being the bread of life gave her what she needed. And then of course the ultimate was when Christ demonstrated that love for us, uh, by showing us that he was willing to die for us, to demonstrate the love that God had for us. Uh, so that was the ultimate demonstration of being the bread of life, because now that life is being poured out on all of us. All right, so now the question is, do you view yourself as being the bread of life? Why or why not?
Yeah, because he is in me, God, source. He's the infinite, the all, he's all. He is the manna or
Yes.
manna in me, and he's within all of us.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's whether or not we choose to realize that or awaken to that all our source or all our needs are met through him, or if we choose to receive from him, like the man at the pool.
Yeah.
He was looking for external ways to get his needs met or to be healed, but God was saying, no, everything is already within you. You have it. You just have to choose it. You just have to believe it,
Mhm.
that you are already whole.
Yes. Love it. Love it. So how can you, or how do you demonstrate being the bread of life? So what are some ways that we can demonstrate being the bread of life?
Um, well, we don't have to worry or fear. We can choose to believe that we're taken care of,
Mhm.
that God supplies all our needs according to his riches and his glory. It's just going and knowing, choosing. that, it's eternally in us.
Yeah, in fact, a thought that just came to my mind is that we can't give what we don't have. So if we don't know that we have this bread of life that's within us, that constantly sustains us, then we can't give what we don't have. So as far as demonstrating being the bread of life, we have to realize that we are the bread of life, that we have the source of that bread within us that we can then share and give to other people. And the reason why we're able to do that is because it's overflowing within us.
Mm.
So, for example, the feeding of the 5,000, right, is is they were full, they were completely full, they had all their needs met, and they had so much that then they could give more to other people. So that's the same for us, is that when we realize the fullness that we have and the love that we have, then we can share that with other people and demonstrate it to other people, just like Jesus did, right? Where he
Mhm.
was able to then share his life with others.
Mm.
Because as he is, so I am in this world. We are the bread of life. I am the bread of life. And I can share that with other people and be that for other people. And as I encounter people around me, like the feeding of the 5,000 or the crippled person or the woman with the issue of blood, I have a source of, of life that I can give them because I have the life within me that then I can share with them, and then they can experience the same thing I am.
Mm.
All right. That's it on the bread of life. So thanks for jumping on and sharing. Next week we're going to talk about I am the light of the world. The Hundredfold is on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. So please reach out to us on those social media. So again, thanks for joining us this morning. There's a QR code to get to that website. You can reach out to me on Gmail with any questions that you might have. So thanks again for joining us this morning, and we will see you next week. Bye for now.